All right, we are back. Jessica, Dennis, it's a tough subject. You know why we call it It's a Tough Subject, Jessica?
Because it is a tough subject, Dennis.
Exactly. And by the way, before I forget, if I look a little stressed, it's okay. It's good stress. We're doing an event on March 18th in Greenville, South Carolina. We're doing It's a Tough Subject live. We put a stake in the ground, wrote a check from the Half a Sorrow Foundation, rented a theater, the Center Stage Theater in downtown Greenville, 501 River Street. It's happening. I've always dreamt of this talk happening. And then when you write a check and you reserve a theater, it gets like real quick. And then you put a date on the calendar. And when I did it, it was like 6 months ago. Now it's like 3 weeks away. And I'm freaking out, but I'm freaking out in a good way.
Yeah.
Because ticket sales are doing very well. The theater holds 240. If we get half that, we get 120, I'm fine. It'll be fine. People have room to spread out a little bit, but I think we're going to get close. I mean, it started to really ramp up. And I'm going to do my talk. I'm going to call on people in the audience, and they're going to read from a very cool blog post from Reddit. And the question was asked, formerly suicidal people of Reddit, what changed from you? What changed? Like you were there and now you're not there. What changed? And the responses are going to be cool. And we're going to have some guests actually read parts of that, introduce themselves, tell us what they do for mental health, and then read it. I think I have 13 vignettes I have to hand out. So I'm not going to be doing all the talking. So the stress is off. I'm going to have help from local nonprofits. So I'm really excited about the show. It starts at 7:00. Yeah.
I want to tell everybody, get your tickets because Dennis, I am getting emails and messages literally daily saying, hey, do you know about this event going on in Greenville? Yes, I do. Actually, I know a lot about it. So I feel like it is getting a lot of momentum. So you may get close to that 240.
Yeah, we have 3 big events coming up. To promote it, we're getting on CBS's morning show. We're on Fox's morning show, all in the local market. And I think there was one other. We're doing Greenville Today, the little thing that comes out at 6 a.m. It comes out on your phone every morning.
Yeah.
They have a lot of cities, and we bought it. We learned when we put our money where our mouth is, we believe in this. And you can tell a lot about a person by the checkbook. So our foundation is, we're doing this. And so we have 3 TV appearances, local press, and then we do it. And then we have a debrief afterwards at Limoncello. It's a restaurant, part of the Larkins restaurant chain right next door, which I'm really excited about that part because a lot of the heavy lifting happens after the talk.
Yeah. No, I actually invited my mom. My mom's never seen me in a situation, and it's not that I'm speaking there necessarily, but it's mom hasn't really been involved a whole lot in the suicide prevention side of things. So I've invited her and my stepfather, and so I'm hoping that they'll come, but I got the family coming.
Well, that's cool. Then for the listener, your mom lost her husband to suicide.
That's right. She's a suicide loss survivor as well.
So in addition, being your dad and her husband, it's different facets of the loss will be represented. I'm the sibling. I can only imagine what my parents went through twice. So there'll be all kinds of people there. And then people that hopefully will see that there's power in being vulnerable, because there is. Heck, we're doing a podcast about our woes. What happens with that vulnerability? Wonderful people flow into your life, like you, Jessica. I met you through this little mission. Pastor Greg Van Dyke, by the way, who I texted yesterday, he said, you guys got to get together. And he was right. Now here we have a podcast.
Oh my gosh, it's funny you say that. I was in Georgetown County, South Carolina, working yesterday where I met Pastor Greg, where Dennis, I think you came down there and spoke. And I was with one of my partners there who's a judge who is such a passionate champion for all of this work. And I said, I'm doing something that I want you to put the word out about. And that's how people find out about us. And talk about being vulnerable. I did something crazy this week, Dennis.
You went skydiving?
That will never happen. Let me go ahead and tell you that. I don't even ride roller coasters. I'm not that type of risk taker. I promoted this on my personal social media page.
This as in the podcast?
Yes.
That's a big move because that's putting it out there. What was the response?
Overwhelming. It reminded me why we do this. So it's not just, I realize it's not just folks that maybe, have lost like us, obviously them, but the other part is people that are dealing with things personally that they don't want to talk about out loud. And this just provides a lot of pride for folks to be a part of a community, but they're not ready to kind of put it out to the world. And I think I had a couple of people reach out and say that to me, like, can I listen to your podcast? I just think it's It's almost like unprofessional therapy. Let me make sure that we're not therapists here. We're just people who just want to share our stories and provide a support for others.
And when you put that out there, one thing may happen, people are going to come forward, but we may develop people who want to talk about it, and they could be guests on this show, by the way. And at the event we do on March 18th, we may have people come up to say, I want to be on your podcast because I'm going to talk about it. Has anyone approached you about that?
I'm talking to someone now. I'm excited. Hopefully, we'll have her on. I think the thing is, Dennis, is it's not the subject. It's being on a podcast. It's intimidating to people. What does that mean? What do I have to do? How do you talk? Do I sound right? I mean, I hate the way I sound. I hate listening to my voice, but it's not about that. It's about the content. And so I think it's not that people are afraid to talk about it. They're just afraid to be on camera and talking on a podcast.
Well, I think once you get over that real quick, you're on a mission. Our mysteries become our mission. I have found that once you release yourself and you're vulnerable, it just flows. Like it did with Chaplain John Denny. We talked about post-vengeance last week. It just started flowing, just started talking about it. I don't think he's a big podcast guy, but he has a story to tell, and he wanted to tell it. So I think that'll happen a lot. And I'm excited about it.
I am too. I just feel like we have the ability to reach so many people. And I don't think, I'm listening to a lot of talk about mental health and what that looks like. And people focus so much on, we've got to have more providers. We've got to have more, psychiatrists. And I'm not dismissing that whatsoever, because quite frankly, some folks do need, that extra level of care. But I'll tell you what I'm hearing a lot more about is the issues with social isolation. Listen to me. I can't talk this morning.
Yeah.
And how that is just an epidemic in our country. People just need somebody to talk to. They need to be heard, and they're lonely. And that is a lot of people really, when you think about someone, in my opinion, when someone says that they lost a loved one or know someone who died by suicide, I think the first thing I think about is how lonely they must have been at that moment.
You're talking to a guy, that both my brothers were alone, and I speak about that. I did a TEDx talk on loneliness, and the person, when I submitted my TEDx talk to my mentor, she became my tour mentor because she ended up tweaking the talk. She goes, "Why are you doing loneliness? You talk about some suicide prevention." And I said, "Well, you know what you're right. You write what you know. I'm lonely right now. I was going through a divorce in a small apartment, and I started researching loneliness, and it's awful. It's so awful that in Britain, in the United Kingdom, they had an office of, they made a loneliness ministry out of it, like a minister of loneliness. They appointed like a cabinet position to address this because people are isolating, and it's terrible.
I love that. I think I was there too, Dennis. I went through a divorce. I had a small, never lived on my own. I had an apartment. And I remember the first time I felt true loneliness. And some people, when they're dealing with this situation and having something they're hiding, they can be in a room full of people and still be lonely.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Freshman year of college, I remember feeling like a number. My student number was my social security number, which is crazy that we use it like that back then. And I just remember everywhere I went, they asked me, "What's your student number? What's your student number?" I'm like, "Hi, my name's Dennis. What's your student number? Student number. I need your student number." I was like, "I'm 20,000 kids on this campus, and I'm lonely as can be." I'm like, "This is terrible."
Yeah. It's just awful. I mean, I feel so blessed because I have so many fantastic people in my life. Just every day I'm so thankful for that. But I think my greatest fear about getting older is losing those people and not having that. And going to thinking about rates for older adults, I think those are something sometimes that we brush over. People really focus on those that are in the prime of their life and, how sad and what a loss that is. And it is. But I think, there are people that are older and just don't feel valued anymore, don't feel like they have anyone. And even, when they do have a family, people are going and bustling around, doing their own thing. And I know a lot of older adults that have talked about just not feeling like they want to live anymore and no worth. And these weren't people that had any issues mental health issues that I was aware of growing up. It just hit them as they got older.
That's it. It's a big part. And that's why the suicide rates, I think, are high in that age group, 44 and higher, 65 and higher, and 85. They're awful. They're worse than the kids. So you hit on something. I remember I took an Amish tour when I lived in Pennsylvania, like a cassette tape. You put it in the car and you'd stop and you'd listen. But they had these houses.
You're telling your age.
Well, yeah. And it wasn't on reel to reel. It was on cassette tape. And you'd stop and you're like, hey, stop here. And like, see that house to the right. And the house, I remember this house, it was almost in 3 sections. And what they ended up doing in the Amish, maybe they got it figured out. They'd have 3 generations living in that house. Like to the left was the mom and dad, then the kids, and then the grandkids. So they kept them together. So grandma and grandpa can't get lonely because one of 27 kids is going to come running through the house at any minute. We tend to, put them in nursing homes or, put them in warehouses. Hopefully my kids hear this because I don't want to do that. I can imagine if you go down to the villages, play pickleball all day, you won't be alone, but I get that. But towards the end of life, I watched my mom and dad outlive some of their friends and it got lonely. My mom had a good network. My dad, all his buddies disappeared.
Yeah, my grandmother lived to be 100, and she was my best friend. And I took care of her, so she lived through my father's death. It was her child, and my grandfather's death, and we spent a lot of time together. As a matter of fact, I think I've said this before. This is going to sound weird. It was the first natural death that I'd been a real part of, someone close to me, and it helped me heal from my dad's death because I got to hold someone's hand that lived 100 years. And was loved, and all her family was surrounded her while she left this world. And I was like, okay, this is a normal death. I know that sounds weird, but
No, yeah, logical, normal death.
she had her friends had all gone. And then she was friends with their kids, and they were old, like they were 80 years old. We're not talking about, and so it instilled a little bit of awareness of that and fear. And I don't have biological children. I've been blessed with wonderful stepchildren and grandchildren from them and niece and nephew. And my niece is very territorial about who's going to take care of me. I'm like, okay, fight it out, folks, because these things worry me. You know what I mean? I have a fear about that. And I could see someone not wanting to live if they were in a situation where they were just left to just be alone and not have any interaction. That's no way to live.
And that's the basis for my TED Talk. I was watching a Japanese documentary called Dying Alone. And the Japanese, they take the 2 words, dying and alone, and they mash them together. And it becomes kodokushi. It became a word in itself, which means lonely death. And I was watching this on my couch, going through a divorce in a small apartment going, oh no, all by myself. Like, that can't happen. I was freaking out a little bit. So I joined a hiking club and got back on a tennis team because of it. I was like, I got to get off this couch.
That's a great point.
If you ever have a chance, watch the TEDx talk. Dennis Gillen, Dying Alone. It was a subject near and dear. I give 10 tips to combat loneliness. And then I talk about some other stuff. And then at the end, I bring in my brothers because they were both alone when they died. And that's kind of sad. So
it is. My dad was alone too. He was on property alone where he loved to spend time in nature. So I'd like to think that he was alone, but he had the trees and the birds and the other critters that which he loved with him. I think someone said when you think about it, people are like, everybody is going to be alone essentially when they die. Like, you're gone by yourself. But our faith is whatever it is, and I know where I'm going, and I'm happy about that. So I think I lean a lot on that too. But I'd like to just tell our listeners, if you know somebody that just doesn't have a whole lot of social interaction, tell them about us. Maybe this is their social interaction. Just to listen to people if they just need to hear voices talking.
And you talk about loneliness, it segues right to it. If you can tell, my sound may sound different. I don't have my microphone. I'm on the road. I spoke at the South Carolina Counselors Association yesterday. I'm at a hotel room at Myrtle Beach, and you said we need more counselors. I'm happy to report that they had a bunch of graduates on stage, and this meeting is the highest attended they've ever had. So people are starting to come out of the woodwork.
Wow.
Really good news. But this morning, they had a thing called Bikers Against Child Abuse. And what they do is, they're so cool. And when you speak on mental health and you get to go to these conferences, you see other people doing really cool stuff. This was so cool, but it dovetails into your loneliness. If a kid is going through child abuse and they decide they're going to testify or whatever, and they want it to stop, these bikers come around the kid. Oh, I was crying when they
I'm literally tearing up right now, Dennis. Dadgummit on a Friday morning.
And they do. And the Bikers Against Child Abuse, BACA, check it out. They were there to tell the counselors that were out there and refer kids to us if you need help. And what they'll actually do is they give the kid a little biker vest. They're part of the biker family. And when the kid goes to court, they go to court with the kid.
So you got these big dudes, like biker dudes.
And then biker dudes, biker women, just loving big hearts.
Love it.
And so when the kid is on the stand and they're feeling nervous, they look out and they see this crowd of bikers that are on their side. Like, no one's going to hurt you. They got you. And They give an example like if a kid is at home and the perpetrator tries to enter the house or drives by. Sometimes they try to intimidate the kid and drive by in the car. They can call bikers against child abuse, and the bikers will come and do a stakeout at the house and man every four corners of the house and make sure that doesn't happen.
I'm literally can hardly speak right now. I'm just envisioning this, like the safety that that must provide for that child. You know, it goes to it's like from youth, and then we're talking about older adults, young, people, like the feeling of loneliness is also super powerful. Again, I can't even like fathom, because I was fortunate enough to maybe not have a functional family always, but we were there, like we were together. And I never felt that kind of fear.
Yeah, I always like to say we put the fun in dysfunctional with the Gillen family. Having lost two brothers to suicide, but yeah, I never felt that kind of fear. But it was a powerful presentation. And when you come out, this is for our listeners. If you tell your story of being vulnerable, and then you get wrapped in the circle of social services, you're going to be amazed at what people are doing out there. And that's why I'm excited about the show, because we're going to hear from different nonprofits and what they do.
Yeah.
Everybody does something a little different, but the end goal is help people. And it's going to be so cool. I mean, they played this video and the guy said, make sure you have tissues on the table. Big biker dude on stage. I'm like, I don't need tissues. Halfway through, I'm taking the glasses off, looking for a napkin. He got me bad. He got me hard. I'm rolling. Yeah, my whole table was like, passing this box of tissues around, watching this video. So
it's just amazing. I just go back to, I work in a nonprofit, and I don't work for the government. And, we have all these programs, and I think people think that that's it. And I'm like, no, you don't understand the power of people and community. People do some really great, that's innovation right there. Like, this child feels scared. This child needs protection. When you think of people that, can protect, I think of bikers, right? Or wrestlers or whatever, like football player, women, that some of these tough women that run these races and do these Ironmen, those are protectors in my mind, right? Yeah. So to have them like think, hey, what can I do to help, and use what almost people see as a negative as a positive, is just like the ones that they do the charity bike rides for children, and get Christmas presents, and, ride around and get pickup donations for them. I mean, how amazing. It's kind of like, don't judge a book by its cover, right?
And that's why I tell listeners, if you're sitting there and you're listening to this, it's a tough subject. We deal with grief. Our grief is a loss of a suicide. It's a very complicated grief, but no matter what your grief is your grief. If you get to a point in your healing process where you want to help somebody, and I'm telling you, there's a nonprofit out there that's probably lined up with you. If you want to do something in suicide prevention, please get a hold of me, Dennis@halfasorrow.org. Help connect the dots. But it gets to a point, I think, in my own healing process, when I started working on the suicide prevention lifeline, I'm like, you know what, that really sucked what I went through. I don't want anyone else to go through that. How can I help? But you have to heal first.
Yep.
You definitely have to heal first. And at the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, where I was a volunteer and on the board, they won't take a volunteer until a year after the event. Like, you can't lose somebody to suicide. And it makes total sense. It's a guideline. I don't know if it's a policy. I'm just quoting. I love that organization, but they won't take you when it's raw. Like, you can't lose somebody in February and then go volunteer for AFSP in March. You got to heal.
Yeah. Well, I was 18 and I'm just doing this now, and I'm 51. I could have probably done it maybe 5 years ago, but not before that, I don't think.
No, in God's time. I lamented this one time. I was sitting down with this pastor, and I was telling him what I do. And I said, dude, I wasted all that time. There were 16 years I didn't talk about my brothers. There may have been longer than that. Well, I was also raising a family and all that stuff, but it just wasn't at the forefront of my mind, but it was always in the back of my mind, do something. So I was telling him I wasted all that time, and he says, no, you weren't ready. And he went to the Old Testament, talked about, the Israelites fleeing Egypt, and they were in the desert, and it should have taken a short amount of time. It ended up taking a long time to get to the promised land. And God said, you're not ready. You're not ready. So he said this, his quote was, that was your time in the desert, Dennis. You had to figure it out. And it made perfect sense. And I'm like, thank you for saying that.
I mean, everybody has their own time. I told you when I got trained to speak in public on this from our Department of Mental Health here in South Carolina, there were like 6 or 7 of us in the training. It was the first training. It was done out of Nami, New Hampshire. Fantastic program, Survivor Voices. I had been by far the longest. And I was the one that was like most torn up about it. Like, I cried every time we talked, and everybody else was tough. And I was like, I'm so sorry. What is happening to me? But I realized that this was the first time I actually like truly was healing. And then everything changed.
That NAMI New Hampshire group, NAMIs are all over the place. But
That's right. National Alliance on Mental Illness, folks.
yeah, and they do great work. And that New Hampshire branch has done some really cool stuff in the suicide prevention world. I know they're part of a coalition up there that they're in their like 25th suicide prevention summit they do for the state of New Hampshire, which is crazy.
Yes.
They've been doing it for 25 years with a coalition. They don't do it by themselves. They're bringing all those other folks. And I forgot the guy's name. I think he's since retired, but Elaine and other folks.
Elaine is who did the training.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's fantastic. Had her in person. I did one at Mental Health for one of their they do trainings, for folks that work like teachers, law enforcement, and they asked me to come speak. And unfortunately, that time, not unfortunately, I had a little bit of breakdown. You never know what it's going to happen. You and I've talked about this when we're speaking. Yeah. One day we may just be, just sail through it, and sometimes we might be a little weepy, and I really don't know why. Just depends. Could be the barometric pressure. I don't know why people say
they have low pressure system.
Oh, I'm acting like this because the pressure outside. Right now, I'm acting like this because we have pollen in the air because it's almost spring. I have seasonal depression, so I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, and Elaine DeMello, or D-E, her name is Elaine, D-E-M-E-L-L-O, DeMello.
Yes. Elaine, if you're out there, we got to get you.
We got to give a shout out to her and get her on here. She actually grew up in the same county I grew up in, New York, Rockland County. I met her too, and just awesome person in the suicide prevention arena. So we should have her on one day.
Yeah.
She's a trooper. I just had to Google her real quick. You mentioned you were really sorrowful at that meeting. Your grief snuck up on you. You were the long-term survivor, and you were a mess. That's how grief works. You never know when it jumps on your back.
Just, why? Somebody asked me one time, like, when do you stop feeling this way? I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure I want to ever stop it happening, because then I feel like maybe I don't want to forget that pain reminds me of my dad. Like, and that sounds very weird, but I feel like I always need to. It helps me go back when I miss him. I don't know. That sounds weird, but the grief, the crying kind of helps me get through that.
It sounds spot on.
I have to tell you something too. It hit me this week. And my nephew, who I adore, who looks like my dad. So I look like my dad. My nephew looks like my dad. He could be my child. I love him to pieces. I'm both close to both my niece and nephew, but he lives here. And he, when I shared on social media that I was doing this, he immediately sent me this text. He's like, I am so proud of you, Gigi. That's what he calls me. I can't tell you how much my heart was singing. And then I look on he's 24, a dude, 24-year-old dude. And he is now sharing Facebook posts about the importance of mental health.
How cool is that?
And I'm like, and I got sad because I was like, I can't, Dad, know you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Your pop will never see. I got you.
Yeah.
And by the way, the grief part, and it kind of comes with pollen too, because I'm sniffling. And
the devil's dust is what I call it.
It's here, and it's I was at a church the other day. I spoke from the pulpit, by the way, at Open Hearts United Methodist Church, and then they invited me to come in, and they're doing a social justice series, and they wanted to touch base on suicide. So I said to the pastor, and she's awesome, we're gonna have her on. I said, when do I go on? Before the service? After the service? She goes, no. You are the sermon. You are we're going to do the reading, and then you come up to the pulpit and let it rip.
Holy cow.
Oh, I was so emotional. It's on Facebook. It's Open Hearts United Methodist Church. They're in Greenville, South Carolina. It's on. They live streamed it. I was a blubbering mess. I don't know why, because I do this for a living, and I was pretty good yesterday. There are times I get caught up. I look at a picture of Matt. I just lose it. But at this church, for some reason, I was crying the whole time.
I think it's also in the presence of the Holy Spirit, in my opinion.
But that was a big part of it. I was in this holy place, and there were people. I was so proud of this church, by the way. Churches, synagogues, mosques, I don't care where you worship or whatever you do, just take on the subject. I'm so proud of this church for saying we're doing it from the pulpit, and it is the topic of the service this day. And then what was really cool, the next week, which would be this week, they were doing the death penalty.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, you guys are really you're going for it.
Talk about a tough subject.
Yeah, they're going right into the belly of the beast. And that's what a church should do, though. And they really should take on these issues. And I was proud of them. I'm like, wow, I'm honored to be part of this. And then it was crazy wild because, I used to be an altar boy back in the day. And you'd have to walk up, but, this is when I was a
I
Catholic.
was an acolyte, just saying.
Yeah, I was a Catholic school, and walk up and you walk out in your procession. I remember seeing all your friends, you'd smile. So that at the end of the service, I was in the front row, and the pastor or the reverend asked me to come out and walk down the aisle with her.
Wow.
And then stand at the door and shake hands. It was crazy. All these memories came flooding back because I was an altar boy with my brother, Mark, who's no longer with us. And we got to do, we were a team, the Gillen boys. And the funniest story about being an altar boy, the funniest story, one day, the pastor, the priest signed me and my brother, Mark, New Year's Day service, New Year's Day, January 1st, the 7:30 service, 7:30.
How old were you?
I was young, but here's what happened. My mom and dad were out that night.
Dear.
They got home like at 4:00 in the morning, and my dad has to take us. So we're like trying to wake them up. They're all hungover. I'm like trying to wake them up. Dad, we got to, we're the altar boys. We got to go. We got to go to church. He throws on like a t-shirt and a trench coat. He's got jeans on. He looks like a hot mess. He's probably still drunk. He goes, drops us off the service. I don't know what he did. Get a cup of coffee, sat in the back, whatever. But I remember he told me this story later. He shook the priest's hand on the way out. There's a great guy named Father Eisler. And he goes, Father Eisler, if you ever do this to me again, I'm going to kill you.
So your mom just stayed in bed.
Oh, she had a maid. Yeah, she had a maid. She's like, good luck with the boys. And and my dad went back to bed. Mark and I were wired. We're up at 7:30 anyway, so it didn't matter. But it was I'll never forget that altar boy story. My dad was so hot.
That's hilarious.
We were a little bit late, but
I love the whole church thing, and you started it when, I guess, we can end it on the way we met was through an amazing pastor, Pastor Greg Van Dyke, who was in Georgetown, South Carolina, who is now in McCormick, South Carolina, which is a super small rural county. He felt pulled to go there. And I'll tell you why, Dennis, I know you probably know this, is he felt like he could have more impact on the mental health and behavioral health issues in that community. The man preaches this from the pulpit. He preached about Narcan, which reverses overdose, from the pulpit in a conservative church in a conservative area of our state. So you got to love people like that.
He goes right into the belly of the beast. And by the way, he's a Lutheran pastor.
Yes, I'm a Lutheran as well. And my pastor's probably listening to this because she liked it on Facebook, and she's amazing too.
Oh, yeah. So the churches have opened up the doors, and that's really cool to see. But we encourage, talk about loneliness. You can wrap it all around it. Churches are a good place. And there's people out there with church wounds. I get that.
Yeah, I had them.
Yeah, and I get it. And if you're mad at God, I get that too. I do my survivor and suicide loss meeting in a church, and some people on Reddit said, why are you doing it in a church? There's another one not in a church, but I'm a man of faith, so I do it in a church. But if you're mad at God, I get it. No judging. I walked behind the casket of two brothers. You think I walked out of church? Well, he only gives you what you can handle. No, I was so freaking mad at God, it wasn't even funny. Just didn't want to look up the sky and didn't want to talk to him. Like, you were on my list. And so I get it. So that's what we are. We'll end with a faith note that if a church does it right, it should be a place for people like us, the walking wounded, should be able to go in there with our wounds on full display, and it should be a place of healing if done right. If a church doesn't do that, you might as well close your doors.
Dennis, it was what stopped me from going for a while. I was not mad at God. I was mad at the fact that people conveyed that if you take your own life, that you are go to hell. We've all heard it. It's disgusting. It is, but you know what? There are churches out there that want to love and support, and don't let that keep you out, because
go church shop and go find one
that's right. That's right.
You're not bound by. I was born into the Catholic Church and forever grateful for my Catholic upbringing, but I don't worship in a Catholic church today, but I still worship in a church.
That's right.
My mom used to say that too. She was a diehard Catholic. She goes, at least you're going, at least you're going.
Not even
going to not agree with where you're going, but at least you're going. It's back to that sense of community, like you join a small group, you get involved. I have 2 small groups in this church I'm in that were phenomenal. And it may help with combat loneliness. So maybe church attendance is waning. Maybe it'll make a comeback. I don't know. All I know is this meeting I'm at right now here, talking about making a comeback. They had record attendance. I think people are ready to get together again.
Love it.
Done with the virtual. 5 years ago, we did COVID. Can you believe it was 5 years ago that thing hit? People are ready to get in a room and exchange ideas and listen to bikers against child abuse and get fired up.
Let's do bikers against loneliness. Let's just get a group of bikers out in your yard and
That's
hearing
it.
the rumble of the bike. And yeah, there's so many there's some good people out there, folks. Don't let this world and all the craziness that goes on daily make you think differently. There are some great people out there. And I think Dennis and I are two of those people that we're your people.
Working towards greatness. We're good. Good to Great is an old book. But by the way, you want to meet some great people? Come to the show on March
Yes.
18th.
I'll
And
be there supporting my friend Dennis.
by the way, this show is portable. If you live in another city, say, Dennis, I'd like to do it here. Absolutely. We get a couple nonprofits together. I hand out these little scripts. Boom, we could set it up. You give me an hour before the show to set it up and have these nonprofits speak at the show and read stuff and tell us what they do. Easily portable. So it's the proof of concept's going to happen March 18th. I know it's going to work. But I'd like to take it on the road. So if you would like to see this show, It's a Tough Subject live in your town, just send me a check for $1 million and you'll never hear from me again. No,
Dennis.
no. Oh, it's a Ponzi scheme.
He's just kidding, folks.
Exactly. That's why I get into this. Yeah. Just send me an email, dennis@halfasar.org. Say, what would it take to get that show here? And we'll do it. We'll make it happen. It's so easy to set up.
Especially for folks in Hawaii listening, we can definitely try to make that happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hawaii in the winter, and then I'll go to North Dakota and South Dakota in the summer where it's beautiful. And we'll just flip. You got to be geographically desirable based on the season. Speaking of North Dakota, I've been there 5 times. Some of the nicest people on the planet. But
That's true.
Every time I've been there, it's been the winter.
I went in September and it was beautiful.
Oh, it's gorgeous. So when you're on a mission, when your misery becomes a mission, you go anywhere, anytime. I got a winter coat.
That's right.
And I'll go to Columbia, South Carolina in August. That's a hot place. And
I live there. Come on now.
I know. I'm picking on you. And I'll go to it is a hot place, but I'll go to North Dakota on January 2nd. You name it, I'll be there. All right.
All right.
Well,
awesome.
Jessica, I appreciate your time today. It's a tough subject. We covered a lot today. And I think the overall theme was loneliness, and don't be lonely. And if you need help with that, watch the TEDx talk. I give you 10 tips on that. And I'm not lonely now, Jessica, because I got to talk to you today. So thank you.
That's right. That's right. Have a great one, folks. Thanks, Dennis.
I appreciate you, Jessica. And folks, it's a tough subject, but we need to talk about it. Thanks for listening.